So following on with the previous interviews that we were after conducting, we're now here today with Karen Thorpe, who owns an event management company called Kickoff. Thanks very much, Karen, for joining us.
No problem.
Appreciate your time. I'm going to run through these questions and see can we get any value from your wealth of knowledge in this area.
Sure, no problem.
Could you tell us a bit about your past experience in charity?
Sure, yeah. So over the years I worked in lots of different industries. So law, sport, IT, McDonald's. I've kind of worked everywhere, but a lot of the time I ended up working with kind of charities and working with different people, like through workers' compensation claims and things like that. So I've always liked the kind of personal touch and working with people, and in the sport world as well. And I was very lucky in the sporting world to work with organisations that partnered with charities. So I think that's what led me down the route I'm on today now. So I've worked at a lot of different charities, mainly charities for kind of sick children in Ireland, some mental health charities, and also Lewy body dementia as well. So a nice mix of different causes.
So in terms of your own company now, what would be the percentage of gigs that would be charity based or charity campaign events?
Originally I actually planned to work more in sport, which is funny, but I ended up going down the charity route. So it's probably about 50-50 at the minute that I do with charities versus sporting as well. So yeah, a mix, but definitely leaning more on the charity side of things these days.
And is it a case where you will just continue to take the jobs as they come, or are you more kind of prone to taking on the charity?
Now I am, but I never initially actually sought out to do that. It just happened to be meeting people, conversations, someone else would refer me on. And one of the things you'd find with charities as well is they don't always have an in-house event manager because they don't need one. So they might only have 1 or 2 events a year. And it doesn't make sense resource-wise to pay someone full-time. So it kind of works well for both of us that they'll just get me in for 1 or 2 events throughout the year, and they don't have to use a resource person basically for just that one role. So
yeah, from running our event, I suppose we kind of like really jumped into the deep end with almost zero experience in putting it all together. So
yeah.
Most organisations or parishes or communities who are running an event, they would probably face the same challenges, and they kind of are unaware of the starting point. So do you feel that's where your value comes in?
Yeah,
your knowledge?
Absolutely, because what would happen a lot of the times with a charity, if they don't have an in-house event person with that kind of experience, they can end up wasting a lot of time and resources trying to figure out where to start. So that's why it kind of works out well sometimes that I can just go in, do the job, do it well, and then be gone. So it kind of works out well for both of us. But I definitely feel that being able to come in and kind of just execute it from start to finish really cleanly for them, without them having to figure out the hard bits. Like, so for example, because I'm an event manager, I'd be quite aware of ways to kind of play the game a little bit. So if say you have an event that's coming up, you might think there's going to be 120 people. Someone without the experience might book food for 120 people, but I know quite well there's drop-off rate, so I'll actually book it for about 80 and save a bit of money there as well for the charity and stuff. So things like that, it's just experience working in it, and it can be helpful. Yeah.
So obviously each charity event brings their own challenges, and they're for different areas, and the events kind of can range from sport events to whatever the case may be. So what is your starting point when you meet with a company or organisation?
Finding out what they're about, understanding the charity is really, really important, and what their kind of goals and their values are, and working with them to see what fits in well with their model and what kind of would make them excited, you know. So I might work with a mental health charity one week, and they would have very different goals than a charity for people with sick children, and the type of event that you might run for them depends on what their goals are. Like one charity I'd work with, they wanted to kind of get into more the Dublin market, so they'd be based in the centre of the country, and for them they were kind of looking for like, how do they do that? And for me, I think that if you're in an event, it has to tick boxes. I always call it a win-win-win, so it has to be a win for everyone. So one of the things I suggested for those guys was doing a Christmas gala, and the reason I suggested that was they can offer it to corporates as a Christmas party, It can be a fundraiser. It also ticks a CSR box for the company as well. Obviously gets a lot more exposure for the charity in Dublin as well. And it's just, everyone's kind of winning. So it really depends on the charity and what the goals are, what works well for them and what their needs are, really. So it's kind of case by case basis.
And what would generally be your lead-in time, or like if you had a tight time frame, do you bring in extra help, or do you ask them, like, do you need to push them, or what way does that work?
So it depends. So sometimes people will know well in advance. So say the Christmas one, for example, we decided on that last year because it's Dublin and trying to find a venue. You'd want to be booking early and you want to try sell early. But another charity I was working with might come to me and say, we want to do something in 4 weeks' time. And you just,
you just have to
go
make
for it.
You just have to make it happen, yeah.
I mean, there's always somewhere. You can always find somewhere to do, or you'll always find doing the event, you'll just make it happen. But if you had a longer lead time, it's easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just make it happen, you know.
Yeah. These days for you, we kind of wanted to see the value of social media in our campaign. I would just like to kind of get your thoughts on how powerful is social media in a charity campaign? Is it necessary? Is it the main cog in the machine, or how do you value it?
Sure. I think with social media, I mean, it's always good to have a social media presence because you get kind of eyeballs on what you're promoting from places you wouldn't really expect. And particularly as well with the likes of Instagram, TikTok and that kind of thing. It will bring in a younger audience and make them more aware of it. But in terms of the impact on the fundraising side of things, I would say minimal. And that would be because when it comes to charity and why people donate to charities, it's always a personal reason. So it's either, so say if you're doing a fundraiser, it's because someone knows you. That's why they'll donate, or they know the charity really well or have a personal connection to that. It's generally not because they saw a social media post that someone put up. So I'd say quite minimal.
Yeah, because we had kind of like trial different types of social media content, both from high production value content to, fast paced, in out kind of TikToky stuff and Instagram reels. And we found so far that, it's building an audience, we're creating a following, we're bringing awareness around the event, but it's not translating to donations,
Yeah, I tend to agree, yeah. A lot of the time, I have never donated because I saw something on Instagram.
Yeah.
Sorry. I generally think that, look, it is good for awareness and definitely for like trends and just kind of building a following around something. But I would think that it's, other than awareness, I don't think it would bring in a lot of donations. I think that is all done through connections, through networking, through personal conversations with people, people who would have a link to the charity for whatever reason. But I wouldn't think social media would actually drive funds.
Yeah, because we've been pushing the donate link with friends, family, our kind of inner circles in our life, and we can't be 100% sure, but we're kind of 90% sure about where the majority of the money has come, and we're almost certain that very, very little of it's come from social media.
Yeah, and there's some nice things on social media that they've actually started doing. So Instagram, for example, you can actually link directly to the charity on your Instagram page, and it's a way of donating. But I put one up for a charity project I was on recently, and I think it was more text to my aunties saying to donate rather than what was up on social media. So it can be somewhat useful, but I just don't think has a huge impact.
What would you say is the main difference between the marketing strategy from a small to a big fundraising campaign?
Personal conversations. So smaller organisations tend to pick up the phone more, where larger organisations, it's just, a lot of promoting maybe in media, a little bit online as well. But the smaller charities tend to have more of a personal touch. And obviously because, they might have the time to dedicate it because they don't have 20 projects going on at once. But I would think it's, personal conversations would be the main difference in terms of marketing.
Would that be a case where people are picking up the phone and having conversations with people, opposed to larger corporations where you probably could be sending a generic email to a HR department within a company?
That's exactly it. Yeah. The smaller charities, oh my God, they're just amazing. They are literally, picking up the phone every day, really going out meeting people, meeting them for coffee, really chasing down leads. And they focus on doing that really, really well. And yeah, whereas a bigger organization, it might be more kind of, a generic email or adverts that you might see in a magazine or that kind of thing. But the smaller charities definitely work really, really hard. Like,
yeah, we have contacted business owners, local business owners, and had conversations, and we've secured business sponsorship, and then we sent mass emails to bigger corporations, the 60 biggest companies in the country, and we're getting bounce back emails, and then it's probably going to be passed to another person, and then it goes dead. So
yeah,
we have been chasing them up, but we find it's like you're going down a rabbit hole, and you might be very, very lucky if someone eventually calls you, but we found.
And sometimes you might get that they'll call you because it suits their need at that time, which is, we're going back to that kind of win-win-win thing. But for the most part, you just have to remember that like money is very important to people, and how they spend their money is very important. So if there's not a compelling reason for them to donate to a charity, they're just not going to do it. So you need to find that link and why it's important or why they'd be invested in it, and that helps. But it's all about personal connection, conversations, and just being real honest with people, as opposed to trying to just advertise something.
Would you ever use or leverage influencers in your campaigns?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the charities I work with actually would use a very well-known Irish influencer, and she has just been outstanding. She's come on board. She's actually helped them sell a children's toy. I'm not sure how much detail I should give about charity names, that's why I'm but she's helped promote the charity really, really well. She's definitely driven a lot of funds, but 100%, yes.
So securing that influencer, is that through a connection also then? Like,
that's exactly what it is. And it's something that will mean something to the person, and it's really personal to them, and that's why they'll do it. They like, no one's going to do anything just for the sake of it, but if it means something to them, they will. So it's a lot of the time, if you're looking to get maybe an influencer or a celebrity or something like that to come on board, there needs to be a connection. So say, for example, if I was working with Lewy Body Ireland, which is like a form of dementia, I would look for celebrities or influencers who have been impacted by that. And that's where you're going to get the buy-in from. So, and the same with kind of children's charities and stuff. Like if you're looking for an influencer to get on board with a charity for sick children, you're probably looking at someone who might have a child or is very close to their family, as opposed to a bachelor in his 50s who has never wanted children. So you just have to look for the personal connection, really.
In terms of networking, how strong do you value networking in charity campaigns? Is it everything?
It's the only reason I have a business.
Yeah.
It's networking is, and people say networking, and it's awkward and that kind of thing. People don't enjoy it, but it's just personal conversations. That's all it is. It's not going out, walking into a room, handing out 40 business cards. That's not networking. Networking is sitting down and having a coffee with someone and getting to know them and getting to know what their likes and dislikes are. And my business that I set up in event management, I haven't even gone out to clients to promote it. It's all word of mouth. It's all people I know. And people approach me because they know I'm doing work because I got to know them. So
you're in your company this year, or it's newly formed, and you felt that you were able to leverage the contacts and the networks from your previous roles.
100%.
Yeah.
All of my clients are people that I got over the years.
Yeah.
So far, I'm sure down the line there might be new ones, but a lot of that'll be referrals and word of mouth as well. I'm going to meet someone today who works in a big company in Dublin City Centre about potentially working with them, but I met him through an event and just got chatting to him, and that's kind of how it works. It kind of just, your network grows the more you get to know people, but it's really, really important. Yeah, it's key.
With budgets for different organisations and different companies that you work for, in terms of what they can give you, do you use advertisement, radio, TV? Is that still a viable option? Does it work?
Oh yeah, of course. I think particularly when it comes to like print media, depending on your audience as well. Doing regional releases, that's all free. It's easy to do, and you can get it into local papers. And the way I target that is, say for example, we're doing something with yourself, and we're trying to promote the fundraiser that you're doing. I'd be sending it to all the local kind of Offaly papers and stuff, and target based off your name. So you do that and do kind of regional releases it's free, easy to do. Social media you can do without paid adverts, but again, as I said, I don't really think social media is maybe the best way to promote it, but e-zines, emails, there's loads of different ways to do it. Flyers work locally, otherwise I don't think they really have much of an impact, but yeah, loads of different forms and and again, just pick up the phone, talk to people.
I was just going to actually ask you that. We went around Tullamore last Friday and we put up 20 to 30 posters on shop window fronts, pubs, poles in the street, and we handed out flyers outside Tesco and Dunn's with a QR code. Basically, that was a Linktree link to all our social media platforms and our website. Would that be an avenue you would recommend to maybe a smaller organisation, do you think?
Oh, 100%, yeah, because the people that aren't on TikTok and Instagram, how are they going to see anything you're putting out? So particularly when it comes to something local, like I used to live out in Slane, and if there was some sort of fundraiser you're doing, you put flyers on people's doors because that's where they're going to see the stuff, or in shop windows or whatever. So I think there's still the traditional types of advertising absolutely work, depending on your audience. If I was trying to run something for people with dementia, for example, do you think they're going to be on TikTok? They're just not. So I think depending on your target audience, there's a lot of different options you can use.
I'm just trying to think of myself. If I'm at home and I come in the door, or the postman comes and there's a flyer, I'm just trying to bring myself back to that moment. What would I do? Would I actually look at the poster? But I suppose it's about putting it out to a lot of people and looking at that 10%, 5% return. That if you put out 400, and you get 20 or 30 calls or 10 texts, then that's worth. You need to be banging on those doors and picking up the phone and making those calls, and be kind of realistic with your return rate on what people are going to give you back.
Absolutely, sure. Even when it comes to things like e-zines, I think the rate for people open is something like 30 to 40%. So you're never going to get everyone, but you don't know until you try. So I usually try all forms and see what comes back.
I suppose at this stage of the game, given your experience, you're used to kind of push back and, people saying no.
Oh yeah, you can't be sensitive. Well, you have to be able to be willing to just go out and ask again. And you have to always remember that money is very important to people. So how they spend it is.
So really... how do you cope with rejection? Do you just accept it, let it go and move on? Or do you ever take it personally? Or is there anyone that's ever kind of like says no in a way that it makes you a little bit, hesitant about the next time?
No, I don't think I'd take it personally. I wouldn't take too many things personally, to be honest. But what I might do is offer them something else. So, for example, if I was doing a summer barbecue as a fundraiser for something, they said they didn't want it, thanks but no thanks, I'd say, oh, we have a Christmas event coming up, and I'd just keep going. But you have to.
Is there any unusual practice or kind of ways that you can, make your name out there? There's a company in Scotland, and they did a small beer company, and they tried all these crazy forms of getting into the media. They put Putin's face on one of their beer bottles, and it blew up. And they did all these kind of off the wall. They did a small budget, but they did all off the wall kind of advertising campaigns with very, very little money, but now they're a huge corporation. Do you ever use a tactic like that to kind of make a splash?
Can't keep you all my secrets, but maybe not me personally, but organisations I have worked with have gone down routes that wouldn't necessarily be traditional or wouldn't have a direct link to what they're doing. So one, for example, actually a mental health charity, I now go to Electric Picnic every year. And they have a kind of place that you can pop in and chat if you want to, but they do a lot of their branding and stuff at it. So they might pick stuff like freebies to hand out, which are funky, colourful sunglasses that people
beard
might
tokens,
wear, or dye people's beards or that kind of thing. And that's a bit like left field, but it works. So yeah, you can definitely look at different options and something that'll just grab people's attention.
Yeah, I like that. I suppose the more colourful it is, if you're a mundane stand handing out flyers, people see them every day. Whereas if you do something, if you're dressed up, I'm not sure what, you could dress up in a tiger outfit or something and
exactly, yeah.
pounce on people.
Well, I might pounce on people, but no, the fact that they went over and looked at going to Electric Picnic, and you're not going to hand out flyers, right? Who in an Electric Picnic is going to walk around and put a mental health flyer in their pocket? They're just not. So they gave them something funky, something quirky that they keep, the branding got in, and people remember them. So it just works really well, yeah. So there's lots of different options.
So you're in this game a good few years now. How has, in terms of how it's evolved, what would have worked a couple of years ago that just wouldn't work anymore?
I think, I mean, a lot of things, like you can kind of say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But the market is quite saturated, which is the issue now. So there's so many different charities. So even if you look at mental health, for example, I mean, can you name all of them? There's a lot. So it's just trying to not step on other people's toes. So me in particular now, if I'm working with a few different charities, I don't want to be like taken from Paul's pot to give to someone else. So you have to be careful, and that's why you have to just kind of come up with new, different ideas. And it's not always the same thing. So it's not always a 5K or a 10K run or whatever the case is. And they are great, and people do them every year, and like doing them in kind of solidarity. Like you see the women's mini marathon, it's just exploded. But trying to find something kind of new and different that will engage people is really important. But I mean, there's ones that people do every year, and that they'll continue to do them every year. But I think finding something new and exciting for people to do is kind of the way forward, and just trying to figure out what that is. And obviously that aligns really well with the charity as well.
Do you think it's very important to have a physical event?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now during COVID, we all saw how well it worked doing stuff online. Like, I mean, the Do It For Dan campaign was just phenomenal. But I don't think that was because it was online. I think it was because it was a GAA community backing a GAA person, and I think that's what it was. So the online stuff now, people are just fed up with it. I actually, if someone invited me to another Zoom call, I actually couldn't cope. So no, I think the in-person stuff is more important where you can do it. You know, there was an event that I did there for an organisation a while ago, and we did it online because you could get more attendees to go. And rather than having an event with 1,000 people at it, we actually had about 5,000 people online. So that kind of stuff can work. But for a charity event, as I said, like the money thing is really important to people. So they need to have an experience out of it as well. So I definitely go with the face-to-face rather than online.
Have any of your events, have they been mostly centred in Ireland, or have you done anything abroad in terms of?
With charities, it's just been Ireland. I've done other events abroad, like in the likes of Australia or New York or Boston. The difference over there would be in the kind of likes of New York and stuff. There's a lot more disposable income, and there's a lot more money. But there's a big spend. So like I've done an event in the Plaza before, which was absolutely unbelievable, as you can imagine. But obviously cost a lot more as well. But for stuff like that, the clientele you're bringing in, you have to give them a elite experience if they're going to be spending a lot of money. So it can be different, and depending on where it is, like stuff over in Australia would obviously be more kind of outdoor focused, that kind of thing, go to wineries and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, depending on where it is, what the budgets are, and what the kind of clientele would be like, you'd kind of change the event around a bit.
How do you would you, when you're dealing with a new organisation or charity base, would you make it essential then to have a good team assembled that can help you out? Like, is that one of your main points that you make to them?
Yeah, it's really important. So I need to know who my contacts are and whose job, who's doing what. Because what happens is stuff can slip through the cracks, and you know, someone can say, "Oh, well, I thought you were doing that," or so I'd make it really, really clear exactly what my role is, exactly what I am doing, exactly what I'm not doing. Because you don't want to disappoint anyone either, and you don't want to drop the ball on anything. So it's really important to be very clear from the start. And a lot of the time, the organisations have great teams. The events just isn't one of the things they do. So it'd be really important to get to know the team really well, because they know the business inside out more than I would. So for me to understand, like when I was doing an event there with a mental health charity, and there were people with, you know, lived experience at it, and I'm not a trained nurse, so it's important for me to speak to the people working in the organisation so they can kind of give you the lay of the land a little bit as well. So it's really important to work with the team as opposed to just go in and take over.
And are you, have you certain things that you need? Like, would you say I need X amount of people to do this, that, and that job? Like,
yeah. So A really easy example would be, so say if I was working with a mental health charity, GDPR would say I should not have access to their database. So I would need someone in the team to contact those people, you know. So the simple stuff like that. But yeah, there'd be, I definitely need support from the team as well.
Yeah, as in like, the same kind of with us as we're dealing with Paralympics Ireland. You know, we were pushing out content about their charity, but we had to be very mindful of the messages that they give out, and that we didn't, you know, put out a message that was contradictory to their core values. So
Yeah,
you know, we obviously had to run everything by them, and they greenlighted it first. So it's the same sort of kind of setup with you guys.
Yeah, and even like if I was doing a survey after an event and it was for, say, example, a mental health charity, and I sent it from kickoff, they'd be saying, who is this person contacting me? Do they know I have lived experience? Like, it's not appropriate at all. So it would have to go from, I might draft it all and put it all together and say, here's, you know, who you need to be sending it to, but it would definitely have to go from inside the charity. Because it just wouldn't be appropriate for me to have that information.
Finally, if you could give us one piece of advice based on your knowledge of our event, what would it be?
It's picking up the phone, personal connection, understanding that something needs to be important to someone, and figuring out who the people are that might be important to. So it's just having conversations, building the trust around it, explaining why you're doing it. As we said, social media can kind of advertise it a bit, but you could do something in advance, like maybe a local coffee thing where people could come in and meet, and you could have a chat about why you're doing it and try and explain a bit more why it's so important. You know, you might get just more people interested in the event. But sounds like what you're doing is really good. But yeah, just pick up the phone, talk to people.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much to Karen. It was great having your knowledge and experience, and I suppose we've dealt with a couple of people on a local level who've done individual events, but no one with the range of experience that you have. So we'll definitely
just flatter me now.
we'll tear that interview apart, and we'll look for nuggets of information that will bring value to our event. So thanks very much.
No worries.
Thank you very much.